Hello, everybody. We're going to go into our next session now with Leonardo Valenzuela Pérez from Ocean Visions. So I'm going to ask Leonardo to come up and join me here on the Climate Pavilion stage. For those of you who are tuning in, I'm Stan Stolniker from Hub Culture, and we're live at the Hub Culture Climate Pavilion at Baku, Azerbaijan. It's somewhere in between Russia and Iran on the western edge of the Caspian Sea, and the home of the United Nations Climate Change Conference occurring this week, which is actually more commonly referred to as COP29. Today we're focused entirely on oceans in partnership with the new Ocean Climate Fund, a global funding initiative that is launching here at COP29 for the global ocean. And joining me right now is an ocean expert, Leonardo. Ocean Visions is actually doing incredible work to scale the transition and collaboration for sustainable ocean innovation. Have a seat here, and I'll join you here. And let's learn a little bit about the big picture on ocean innovation. And tell us about the work of Ocean Visions.
Thank you, Stan. Well, thank you first of all for the invitation to be here today. And so what Ocean Visions is doing is addressing a problem that we consider the most crucial in this moment, which is how do we deal with the impacts that we're having, that the climate impacts in the ocean, and how we can address those in a comprehensive way so that we can turn it into a manageable problem first, how innovation can make a dent to this massive issue of like thermal stress and acidification that's happening in the ocean, and other problems that are trickling from there, like the oxygenation. So what we are trying to do is identify what could work, what has high potential, currently underinvested, but that could have really an impact, and a really substantial impact considering the scale of the problem.
So this is a big topic. It's a complicated scientific topic. Can you walk us through what you guys are working on? I love this idea of ocean climate restoration, but there are many different components to that, and there are also a lot of, I think, doubts from people about our ability to restore aspects of the ocean. So tell us a little bit about how you guys are learning about solutions for this.
So what we are doing is, and just to give you a bit of background here, Ocean Vision started in 2018, and it started from this idea that there is a lot of research, a lot of science and engineering happening at academic institutions that is not finding its way quickly into in the innovation sector, into like the work of entrepreneurship, or even the understanding of civil society, of the ways in which this could be translated into action. So what we are trying to do at Ocean Visions is to bring a multi-sector community, so bringing actors across the board, across borders, very internationally focused work, so we can understand what could work, but also what doesn't work. And I think that is
equally
a very important
right?
question. Yes. Right, because there are several concerns about the scale of the work that needs to be done. So we are talking about decarbonization, which in many ways it's something that is very, like, social level of acceptance is like, yes, please, like, we should transform the economy, we should transform society in terms of how we use fossil fuels. But then when we get to the part of carbon dioxide removals, that's something that is basically a kind of a reverse industrialization.
Yeah, it's essentially geoengineering.
There is certainly a component. Now, the concept of geoengineering, of course, opens lots of fears, but we are in a moment when we have done a geoengineering experiment with the world in this 2 centuries, with the amount of emissions, the amount of heat that we have transported into the ocean. So the scale of the problem requires solutions that have also kind of an equal level of ambition and scale.
And I think you brought us some information here for the screens. Can you walk us through some of that thinking? Because I think this is probably going to help to be a little bit visual.
Just for some substance. So I had some slides. I will I promise that I will jump on most of them because it's a lot of information. But just to give you a sense also of who we are, this maybe could go into a link later, but we are a network of 25 institutions, most of them leading oceanographic institutions in North America. We have partners in Canada, in the United Kingdom, in Italy. And we also have a collaboration with the UN Ocean Decade where we have, and I'll talk a little bit about later, but where we have another, by now, 32 additional partners in 5 continents. So what we are doing with this group, we are convening experts from all these several institutions, leading institutions, bringing that capacity, bringing the potential for collaboration, like materializing collaborations, and leading the way for the sector. So indicating what we know, what are the gaps of our understanding, and what needs to be advanced. So, and the way we are working, and as I said, is just this idea of identifying emerging potential options, the convening of diverse players, catalyzing action. Catalyzing from the beginning was a big word for Ocean Visions. So we are not the ones who are developing any single one of these options. What we are doing is showing, in a way, coordinating some of these actions and getting to a point that we have an understanding of who can do it, and in that sense, we are very agnostic. So we are agnostic technologically, but we are in terms of what options are the best right now, but we're also very agnostic in terms of who should be doing it, as we think these are things for the public sector, private sector. We're very open in that sense. And supporting a pipeline of innovation. So that's very important, working with startups, working with the sector that has their hands on this and providing guidance. So that's why we work with institutions that have the prestige and capacity sufficient to guide the work of, say, a startup that's trying a new technology. And we're also working to expand this community. So it shouldn't only be a community of a few entrepreneurs or a few academics. Like, this needs to be a movement. And that's another very important piece of what Ocean Visions is doing.
I love it. Let's.
This, when we talk about being comprehensive, what we are doing is we tend to be, and just like in a very open way, we tend to be very associated with marine carbon dioxide removal. Anybody who has heard for a while about Ocean Visions, that's the area. But Ocean Visions is working in a very comprehensive way, very ambitious, large agenda, where we are going in this scale, like identifying this set of options from decarbonization, which is our reduce program, seeking marine-based, ocean-based options to decarbonize society. We are looking at removals, so all potential options to remove carbon pollution from the ocean, or using the ocean to remove it.
Can we double click on that for a second?
Mm-hmm.
How would we remove carbon from the ocean? Because this could be the solution for maintaining pH levels that will allow the ocean to remain alive. Not to go through to ruin your slide order, but it's so interesting.
Yes, because you want to go into this part. Sorry, I think I'm in the middle of the slide, but just to give a sense. So the main logic is that you have a few pathways that we have identified so far that could potentially work, and they operate at the level of using kind of naturally occurring processes of the Earth, some of them at the geological scale. But what you are trying to do is to identify ways that you can, for example, lock carbon, so ways in which biomass could be sunk to the bottom of the ocean. This could happen with biomass that is terrestrial, or could happen with seaweed, for example, macroalgae. That's one option. Then you have a set of options that use the biological, the ocean biological pump, where what you're doing is introducing, for example, fertilizers, like things, nutrients that are not super abundant in certain parts of the ocean, and that way you create an explosion of life through like phytoplankton, for example.
It's really interesting. I was talking to an ocean scientist a few weeks ago, and they said that when the volcano exploded in Tonga, like 2 or 3 years ago, it actually, put all this volcanic ash into the sea around it. But what they've seen in the 2 or 3 years since is like 1,000% increase in biodiversity and life in the ocean, because that ash then changed the pH balance of the water, and then it actually created this phytoplankton bloom that resulted in more food and like a really abundant food for fish, which has now moved all the way up the food chain. It's been like extraordinary in this area right around that area where that volcanic explosion happened. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
It could be to some extent. So that is mixing two possibilities there, because you have one aspect that is the fertilization. So some minerals like iron. There are other options that are under exploration now. But then you also have the other piece, which is ocean alkalinity enhancement, where you can also introduce, where is the, well, it's here, if you can see it at home. So this one is transportation of material to the ocean that is dispersed and affects the pH of the water. So that's one option. But when you are introducing it for the purpose of activating like phytoplankton, for example, that's a different method. This one, the concept is you have an explosion of life there, so that it turns into biomass, and as it's dying out, it will be transported to the bottom of the ocean. With ocean alkalinity enhancement, you want to operate more at the surface level, where you want to affect the pH of the water so that you are addressing immediately acidification. So that is this is one of the methods. So one is dispersing, another one is using electricity, so electrochemical options. And that pretty much, like I would say, storage, ocean alkalinity enhancement, fertilization are probably the main methods that are under research right now and are the most promising. But there could be definitely others. And and this is part of this work of figuring out what are the impacts, what are the positives, if they can be sustained in time, and yeah.
Sorry to interrupt your slide flow. You can. How does it go?
No,
So you had those 4 R's, right? Reduce.
Yeah, we have the 4 R's.
Restore.
Here. So.
And repair.
So reduce, remove, repair, which is one of the most exciting pieces that we have developed this year. I mean, it's a bit longer process than just a year, but we work on this issue of there are critical ecosystems that are critical for climate stability that are about to reach a tipping point. So we're also working on how do we deal with these tipping points, how do we address them, so that they're like exploring if there are options. Like, is everything lost, or is there any potential that we can also, for example, slow down the loss of Arctic sea ice? So we produce a roadmap to identify what has been suggested so far, and understanding the different levels of potential for those. So that's repair, but repair could also apply to, say, coral reefs. So how do we stop heat from reaching coral reefs so the bleaching is less intense or affect, again, acidification? A comprehensive method to work on marine ecosystems, that's the repair program. And then you have REACH, and in REACH what we are doing, a lot of that work is through the UN Ocean Decade, and the concept is to partially enhancing capacity, creating new collaborations, creating connections across continents in terms of like what is possible, what areas of this work could be relevant, and also understanding how we can advance governance to many of these areas, because it's not just a scientific issue, it is certainly a social issue, but it's political and it's geopolitical as well. So all those variables are there.
Understand.
Now, I think this is somehow like pretty well understood, the issue that we're facing with accumulation of emissions, and something that in the previous presentation Mark was emphasizing pretty strongly. But yeah, so the ocean crisis is a climate crisis. The climate crisis is an ocean crisis. So there is this interface of the different systems on the Earth that are completely out of whack at this point, and they can get a lot worse as things progress. So we are really emphasizing this connection, and we are trying to have an impact exactly there. So again, what are the issues that we are facing? Thermal stress, chemical stress, acidification. This is when we are talking about what are our options, I think this is a very important thing to consider, which is, I'm sorry that the slides change a little bit, but the problem with chemical stress is that when we consider the baseline, when we think, okay, so we need to do something about, like, say, conservation today. The problem with conservation is the shifting baseline. So as acidification keeps increasing, we see that the like survival potential of biodiversity at large of many species starts decreasing, and all those changes mean that we can either like do nothing, in a way, like let things continue as they are progressing, or we can try to figure out what could be done to change that trajectory. So that's I think a crucial
I think
part.
this is a really interesting number here. 30% increase in ocean acidity. Is that since 1750? Like the oceans are 30% more acidic?
I think this is for the last 200 years, or I mean, it's roughly, like if you say 750 to 1800, it's not a big difference. But 30% increase is kind of correlates to the amount of excess emissions that the ocean has taken in that period of time. So there is certainly like a clear way in which you can see how, as the ocean takes more CO2, it's becoming like more acidic. It's just basic element.
Fascinating.
So now, as I said, we have these 4 parts. So on reduce, the focus there is, okay, is there a potential in the ocean to decarbonize society? Can we use more products from the ocean? Can we replace existing materials? Can we find more sources of energy? That is really where we are. And just here is a reference to the ocean panel. So the ocean panel has identified, and this is something that was mentioned earlier as well, that the potential that the ocean has to make a dent to the climate issue is immense. Only in terms of decarbonization options, that is immense. And here is just some of the summaries. I absolutely recommend all the reports from the Ocean Panel. Ocean Visions is part of Ocean Action 2030. So we are also supporting governments in their national ocean action plans so that they can incorporate some of these technologies or options into their plans. So yeah, the program in terms of reduce is right now looking at what are some of the options out there, what are very early stage, but high potential. So what we are trying to understand is what can we do to unlock it. That's the way we operate. Now, in terms of remove, what motivates this work is the fact that all scenarios below, or pretty much all the scenarios below 2 degrees for the Paris Agreement, they require an element of removals. And these removals right now are nowhere near they should be in terms of,
are we removing any right now?
There is removal happening, but it's mostly conventional. And by conventional, it's like trees.
Biodiverse and...
Right. So if I remember well, it's like 1% is non-conventional. So it's a really, really tiny amount right now, but the point is that if those options can advance and really scale and drop in price, those could be like really immense, like important breakthroughs. So, and this is also related to the fact that we are expecting that pretty much around 10 gigatons of carbon has to be removed by 2050 every year until the end of the century to keep us like in a stable place or somehow like Paris stable. So
removal debt.
Right, and that's a massive endeavor, and it's the something we'd like to emphasize. So we are dealing with like Paris Agreement wise or IPCC wise with modeling that has consideration for solutions that don't exist yet, and that's the reason that ocean ambitions exist in a way. Is how do we fill that gap of all the solutions that need to exist that don't?
Oh, so that's interesting. So the IPCC is counting on us coming up with things that we don't yet have in order to begin to reach the needs that we have, which, you know, there's a lot of talk about we have all the solutions theoretically, they're just not deployed. But it's very interesting to think that the worst impacts of climate change are basically being discounted because they just figure out that we'll come up with something in the future to fix it.
To some extent. So they have identified some of them, and in the like early plans say BECS or other methods. But the problem is just the sheer size of the challenge.
And we also don't know what we don't know, right? So who knows how these things all interlock in a very complex system.
Exactly. So, and I'll start just moving more quicker with this, but why the ocean? I think it's again a matter of scale and a matter of like as a sink, you have all these different things like the atmosphere, soils, vegetation, how much carbon they can store, and then you go to the ocean and you just like completely change the way you look at the problem. So that is important. Now, we cannot look at the ocean just as a carbon sink because that would be a very insane approach. But we look at it from a perspective of potential here. I will skip some of this. So what Ocean Visions does, this is one example of what we do. So creating these illustrations, for example, so that these methods can be better understood. And we also generate products like this high-level roadmap where we just said, what is it that we need to know and what will be necessary to have those answers by the end of this decade. So this is something we launched last year, and it's intended to be for policymakers, for scientists to say, okay, what can you, like where your energies would be well spent in this area, and what level of resources we need. So our estimate was between $2 to $7 billion to have these answers. And then we are also doing things like this mapping. This is we think this is the best database right now of experiments, field trials that have occurred, are planned to occur, or are happening at the moment. So this is something that you can find with Ocean Visions. We are encouraging everyone who has information to just submit, and so we have a very transparent and an updated sense of what is happening. And right. And it's important to notice that most of this has been happening in the last 3 years, like in terms of like new field trials. Field trials are very, like something I should have said with this. It's important to have these field trials. It's important to do these outdoor experiments because it's the only way to understand how they could work as they scale.
Based on the research that you guys have looked at so far, is there any indication of what's working best?
You can tell by where most of the activities, like the volume of activities that are going, that certainly OAE is getting most of the attention, like the use of alkalinity enhancement.
So that's like olivine, that's like putting things in the water that make the water more alkaline?
That's one way, but the other way is using closed systems where you extract and through mineralization or through membranes, you remove carbon, have a process, either by separating the acid from alkaline.
You know, it's so much work removing all this carbon. What if we just stopped issuing it?
That is a big question, and it's also a humanitarian crisis level question. because we're seeing the problem from, especially from the global north, in terms of, like decarbonization has to happen at this level of, say, progress, well-being. But when you look at the rest of the world and you have this youth population and trying to reach certain goals, and we haven't come up with the alternatives to get there. Yeah. And I think that is a big push in terms of also, when I say a geopolitical problem.
Okay. We have about 5 more minutes.
No problem.
And then we're, just for the audience and also for our technical team, we're going to be going live with our Zoom conversation at around 5 o'clock. So we want to make sure that we're in the Zoom room early, and we're going to bring other people to join us in this conversation.
So I'll just give you a quick run through some of the other work we do. So this is what I mentioned. These are very well-known companies now in the MCDR space, and they are part of our Launchpad program. So they are receiving expert advice as one of the pieces I mentioned earlier.
Are you invested in these companies?
We don't invest. We are bringing experts to advise them so that they can be more effective.
But are these for-profit organizations that are like
yes.
Typical venture-backed startups, or
they are
those types of companies?
They have different kind of
Can you run us quickly
models.
through like what they do? A little bit?
I will not be able to go in detail to what each of them is doing, because this is not the area where I'm working, but I just can give you some example. Brilliant Planet is an organization that's mostly working, I think, in Morocco, and they are growing macroalgae, like biomass in the desert, and they are burying that biomass produced in the sand as one way of locking carbon. CO2 is a company that's working on electrochemical removal. Carboniferous is working on locking biomass in deep sea. Yeah.
Great. That's
just
perfect.
some examples.
Yeah, just because it's good to have a little sentence with the name.
Now, I mentioned the Arctic sea ice work, and just for your, so yeah, preventing tipping points, I think I already went through this to some extent. So this is the Arctic sea ice roadmap. There's a massive QR code if you want to have a look at it. Similar logic to the roadmap that we have for MCDR. Again, guiding what is out there, what are the gaps, what we can advance. And yeah, that's for another time. But I wanted to just give you a sense of what is our REACH program. We lost there some of this, but one of the main elements of the REACH program is the Global Ecosystem for Ocean Solutions, which is part of the UN Ocean Decade. Through this program, we are trying to understand how these agendas can be expanded, but expanded through like a dialogue, international dialogue. And yeah, and we're seeking collaborations. There is a call open right now of the Ocean Decade, the 8th call for actions. We are receiving anything that we consider to be really at the forefront of innovation, and we bring them to work in a collaborative way. And we are also creating, well, this moved as well. We're creating these ocean climate innovation hubs. So we have like this 6 that we have endorsed under the UN Ocean Decade so far, Latin America and Africa. And these are initiatives that are independent and that are bringing academia there, similar to the Ocean Visions model, but in their countries, in their regions, and they are mobilizing like in the wheel to basically having enabling conditions to do more research, and also working with policymakers around some critical problems, and advancing this program of research with their academic partners. We have fellows, so these are our 3 current fellows who are receiving support to advance this work in a very focused way, and this has been quite, I would say, one of them very exciting that we've been doing recently. And yeah, and we are planning to continue funding this. We're looking for more support, but the idea is really to have a very concrete outcome out of these fellowships, which is the development of new organizations working in the, so we're basically incubating new initiatives. So, and I think that's, oh yeah, so this map is just where the ocean ecosystem, so the global ecosystem for ocean solutions is at the moment. We have 32 initiatives in 5 continents. That's one of the very ambitious things that we are doing as an organization of our size. But yeah, this I think is very important if we want this agenda to become a global agenda and something that it's not really only guided from one side of the world.
Right. Amazing. I think we have a couple minutes for questions if anybody wants to ask a question. Yeah, let's pull that in.
Thank you so much for this very informative presentation. I was wondering if you could dive deeper into how you believe Ocean Vision's work can tie into the next round of NDCs and how Ocean Visions can incentivize countries of integrating oceans and MCDR into their nationally determined contributions.
That's a great question, and I would say that the work that we're doing right now, it's hard to translate it to NDCs because just one aspect of this is fundamental for MCDR is MRBs and MRB technology and standards. So that is still part of this work of advancing this research and understanding those methods. So it's really hard to do this quantification, particularly with open systems. So the IPCC will be working on methodologies for ocean alkalinity enhancement. That is part of their agenda right now. So we expect that probably for the next round or in updated rounds of NDCs, that could be a possibility. But I would say that something to look closely is the developments with, for example, Singapore and the work that they are doing with aquatic. So Singapore as a country is investing in aquatic. And they have already kind of a protocol for measurement that may soon become more accepted and maybe will become one of the first NDCs of this kind in the sector. But that's just speculation on my part. It's what I'm saying so far.
Hi, Leonardo. Oh, that's really loud, sorry. Hey, no, just kidding. Sorry. Anyways, thank you so much for the presentation. I always really appreciate your review of all these different technologies and the work of Ocean Visions. One of the things that I thought was really interesting, I think it's really important that all of us pay attention to the IPCC, right? And the IPCC says that Paris-consistent scenarios that limit warming to 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius require the use of CDR on the order of 7 to 9 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year by 2050. And one of the things that I thought has been really interesting from your presentation or Brad's presentations in the past is mapping that 7 to 9 gigatons and how much nature-based solutions can get us there and what is that delta, right? And so I was wondering if you can speak to that, and I was also wondering if you can give us information or maybe numbers on how much MCDR or other CDR technologies can fill that delta.
So, yeah, so on the question of nature-based solutions, that can be broad, but if we're talking about ocean nature-based solutions, that tends to be considered blue carbon, for example. Some of the estimates that we have worked with is that if you maximize restoration of blue carbon ecosystems, and it's always very important to say, it's really not the right way to look at the blue carbon just for carbon removals purposes, because they are very fundamental ecosystems as well. So that's very important. But we have estimated it to be around 1 gigaton at like maximizing restoration there. If we're talking on a scenario of 10 gigatons, that is, I mean, it's substantial, but it's not covering everything. So that is kind of like what we are dealing with. And of course, not all removals should come from the ocean, but we think that that's where it could be more scalable and probably more cost efficient. That's one of the reasons of exploring this. And the other piece is that we don't think that 1.5 is a safe number. So we really believe that this, right? It's not a safe place. So ideally, what we should be doing is, I mean, net zero doesn't really say something about safety. So we should really aim for, like, going for this idea of like restoration, repairing, regeneration at large.
Yeah, I mean, we're blowing past 1.5 at the moment, and that starts to lead to feedback loops that have consequences we can't quite even determine because we've been so focused on the 1.5 threshold. Okay, do you have another question from anyone? Okay, we are at 5 o'clock, and one of the components of what we're doing with the fund is building community partners. So we have invited some of those community partners to join us via Zoom. And we don't know who's joining, how many people, if anyone will join. But we are, I think, do we have our Zoom connection live? 2 minutes. So we'll have Zoom live, but what we're going to do to start that conversation is now open up this next session over the next hour to a group conversation. What we'd like to do is get some feedback from you guys on the day, and we want to hear from you about what your thoughts are from the things that you've heard, not only from Ocean Visions, which is a community partner, Sustainable Ocean Alliance, the work with the Wisdom Keepers, in this morning, fantastic discussions on foreign policy and marine protected areas, as well as maritime decarbonization. There's so many different conversations that we've had today that I think really showcase the potential breadth of this project. It is not necessarily a small endeavor to begin this, and we've been working on it since January, really, when the Green Climate Fund asked us to begin this collaboration with them. But the way that we're going to be able to do it is through cooperation, through collaboration, and then through technology. And so we have some technologies that already exist inside the Ocean Climate Fund that I'd like to tell you about now. And there are also new technologies that we have envisioned to build. So I'm going to give you a little insight into that. Thank you very much, Leonardo. Really appreciate you.